Hello, fellow Star Trek fans. Welcome back to a brand new episode of The War Room, brought to you as part of the Clonestar podcast. I am your host, Mike Overton, and joining me again this week in the co-host seat is my wonderful friend, Sho Hurley. Sho, how are you doing this week?
Not too bad, Mike. How are you?
I am good, thank you, despite moving house. I hate moving house. This week, we are absolutely delighted to be joined by a life coach, author, musician, producer, and award-winning actress who has appeared on such shows as Murder, She Wrote, As Worlds Turned, Seinfeld, Matlock, but we know her best on this show as Tora Ziyao from Deep Space Nine. This week, we are delighted to welcome the incredible Melanie Smith. Mel, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, truly.
Before we get started, Mel, actually, I have to say that I listed out the TV shows that you were in when I was writing up the notes, and I put in brackets for Mike. I said, Mike, you probably won't recognize most of these shows. I do. Mike probably won't because Mike's a bit younger.
Hey, I know what Seinfeld, Murder, She Wrote, yeah. Beverly Hills 90210 are. Matlock and Blossom, not quite so much.
Joey Lawrence.
And Mike, you actually got you actually pronounced the number at the end of Beverly Hills 90210 wrong. You said 90120.
Sorry, wrong zip code. That's Beverly Hills in a parallel universe. It's fine.
Yes,
we've gone to the mirror universe. Yeah.
Mel, when I was asking you to come on the show and I checked out your website, I was completely shocked by you have had this incredibly remarkable career where you've, for want of a better term, reinvented yourself several times. You don't seem to be somebody who is kind of daunted by the task of saying, I've tried something, I enjoyed it, now I'm going to try something else, and consistently doing that. And I'm just curious, where does your story kind of start? Like, how does it start kind of when you were young? Like, did you grow up in a creative household, or what was it that kind of gave you an initial creative spark?
That's a great question. I did not grow up in an overtly creative household. There was creativity in my household. My mother had creativity. She could dance and she could sing, but she never did that. And I never really saw her do that. But the whole Jungian philosophy that a child's life is impacted by a parent's unfulfilled dreams, right? Unfulfilled. And so my dad was not a creative. He was an entrepreneur. But where I really got creative was when I went to summer camp. And I was so in my flow, I had to create this show and come up with themes and costumes, and I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. I would lay in my camp bed and I would sneak out and go to the Arts and Crafts Center and build costumes, and they'd have to drag me back to my bed. And I thought, wow, this makes me happy. I was a dancer my whole life, and quite athletic. And I was a creative writer, but I never ever thought about being an actor. I didn't, honestly. This is going to sound so silly because I was a television watcher, but it never clicked that it was a job you could get. Like, I was just like, oh, these imaginary people doing these imaginary stories, isn't that? But I never went, oh, I want to be that, because I didn't know it was a thing. Could be. I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, right? And it wasn't until I was in New York City, I moved to New York City after I worked for Playboy Corporation. I was a choreographer. I choreographed their cabaret shows. And I was called into New York to model for an agency. I didn't like modeling. It was really boring. And I started doing photo styling instead. And then I was like, oh, there's something out there creative for me to do. And my best childhood friend called me and she said, I'm going to get fired. You have to go on this talent search for me or I'm going to get fired. And I was like, a talent? It was for Dick Clark. Do you all know who that is?
Yeah, Dick Clark, yeah. Okay.
So it was for Dick Clark, and the prize was like $500,000, a contract with MGM, and I was like, what? I'm not dancing. I have bursitis in my hip. I don't know how to do anything. And she's like, I don't care. Read from a book. So I literally took a book off my shelf and I went to the network. There were 7,000 girls there. Went to the network. I read from this book. Like right, hi. I like read the longest paragraph I could find.
What book was it, Mel?
It was called Texas Trilogy. I don't even know what it's about. I don't know. It was just on my book. And I read from this book, and Mary Jo Slater, Christian's mom, Christian Slater's Mary Lynn Henry, who was head of the network at that time, casting at that time, Dick Clark, and somebody else. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I went to dash out of the room, and they said, come back here. And they said, call this woman, call this man, you need headshots. And I was like, I left that, and I called my friend. I was like, what the F? I don't want anything to do with this. And she goes, well, I'll really get fired now if they want you back. So I went back because I had to. And then the next thing you know, my boyfriend at the time calls me and he says, did you see the New York Post? And I said, no, why? And he said, you're on the front page. It says Melanie Smith has got the right stuff. And the next thing I know, all these casting directors are calling me in. 25 agents wanted to sign me. I signed with this one agency, and they said, look, the way the business works, you have to work for free. It's going to take years. I said, it's this simple. I don't work for free. You have 3 months. And if I don't have a job, I'll do something else with my life. Now, here's the craziest thing. When I was a baby, I had major surgery, life-saving surgery. And I was actually left in the hospital. My parents couldn't get back to me because it was the day Kennedy was assassinated and the roads were closed. The assassination was announced during As the World Turns. Flash forward, the first job I get is As the World Turns. And I make a joke. I say, I never wanted to be an actress, but I always wanted to live in Oakdale. And that was my first job. I was on As the World Turns. I got As the World Turns in two feature films within 3 months of signing with that agent.
So I have to ask you, Mel, what was it, in your own opinion, of your reading that was so impactful to them? Like, did you just read it straight out, or was there different characters that you did different voices for, or what did you do when you did the reading?
I think I was just certain. Like, when I went in for the audition, usually you screen test in front of cameras, but something had happened in the studio. I think the air conditioning broke. Equipment can't be fired up if there's no temperature that's correct, so it'll overheat. So we had to do our auditions in this conference room. I walked into the audition, and it took place in a stable, and I came in full English riding gear. I mean, this is how committed I am in life. By the way, stick a pin in that, because it's about commitment, you guys, right? I was so committed, and I came in, I had like a crop, and the other two girls up for the role were in sandals and jeans and a sweatshirt, and I was like, oy vey. So I walked into the room, and there were all these executives, and there was this little space for me and the leading man to read together. And I walked in and I went, well, I can't do this like this. Could you all get up, please, and move the table back? And you see all these suits at the network looking at each other going,
who the hell is this?
And they got up and they moved the table back. And I was like, that's good. Okay, right there, perfect. And then I did the scene with conviction, and I got the role. And so I think that's how Star Trek, when I walked into Star Trek, the audition for Star Trek, everybody there, and there were fabulous actresses there, wonderful actresses there, all whose work I knew. And I was in a sundress because I looked at Torres-Ayala as an innocent. I didn't look at her as an angry POW, prisoner of war, which I know you know, but just in case anybody didn't. Pizza on the way, no kidding. So these other actors were in like these burly, fatigues and combat boots, and I'm in a sundress. And I walked in and I kneeled at Mark's feet. I think Mark read with me, and I played it as so innocent and pure. And when I walked in and I went, well, I really effed this up. I didn't. This my take is so wrong because everybody else, I guess, we think this. This is a note for everybody, right?
Yeah.
We think because everybody else looks the same, they did it right. We did it wrong, right? But when we go into creative endeavors, true artistry is a perspective, right? We're looking for something that no one thought of. And so I left that audition thinking, okay, well, that was really fun. But I knew I had done really solid work in the room. I said, that was really fun. And my cell phone rang when they were flip phones. And actually I had a little yellow Nokia.
That's it. Melanie's done it.
Melanie, every episode we have someone says something that intentionally ages the podcast, and our audience don't have a clue what's going on. So when you say flip phones, flip phone, what the hell is that?
Exactly. I wish we'd go back to them. Take some brain cells, but
those are the days.
My phone rang and my agent said, I don't know what you did, and they have to read everybody else, but you got it. And I was like, okay, cool.
So, Mel, I have when you got the first job on As the World Turns, okay? As you said yourself, like when you're signing up the agency and things like that, and they were saying you have to work for free, and you basically said, yeah, get lost, not a chance. I'm working paid money, and that's the way it's going to be, right? We've often heard the story of people in Hollywood, and they're kind of there going, oh my God, this is my big chance. I have to listen to what they say and all that kind of thing. But you had the courage, you had the confidence to say, no, that's not happening. But you obviously knew deep down, you said, if this isn't for me, that's fine. I can do something else. I'm just wondering, when you arrived to that point in your life, who were the main inspirations in your life that are kind of, obviously, look, you're going to be your own inspiration yourself in terms of your life experience and all that. But why did you know that you had the confidence to kind of say, do you know what, I'm going to be fine. I can achieve what I want to achieve myself. And if it's not here, it's going to be somewhere else.
The only answer I have for that was my dad constantly saying things like, we don't worry about you. You're the one we don't worry about. You can just go do anything. And I'll go back to summer camp. I went into summer camp not knowing anybody. My parents asked me, who do you want to go to summer camp with? You want to go with Lisa or Jill or Nancy? I said, I want to go where I don't know anyone. And they said, why? I was just 10. And I said, because everybody I know already knows who I am. And I already know who I am with them. I want to find out who I am in a place where no one knows me. And my mother was like, what? So I did. I went to the summer camp where I didn't know anybody as an exercise in knowing me, right? Like, who am I around new mirrors? Who am I when someone that doesn't know me or my family or my story, when they mirror me back to me, what will I see then, right? Not something that already exists. And I think because I was so sick as a child when I was born, I think when children have crisis at a young age, there's a little crack in the universe that shines on them that says something bigger here in the world. Like, don't go for what's laid out in front of you, get curious, right? And think not bigger, think higher. How do I want to feel in life, not just what do I want to do in life? So people covet things that they think will give them a great life. I feel what I want to feel for a great life. Like, if I had the opportunity to make $1 gazillion and I didn't feel in my sweet spot in life, I wouldn't do it. Like, I don't have that in me. I'm not, well, I'll do it for the money. I do it for the feeling. And I've always been like that.
It's interesting. I was talking to someone in my workplace only last week, and I was kind of explaining to them that you have to be true to yourself and you have to look specifically at what you're doing and what you want to achieve. And I've often asked the question of people, like, if you see other people getting promoted on LinkedIn, if you see people getting different jobs, I said, do you look with a bit of green-eyed monster? I said, but you don't know what's going on in their life. Do they actually enjoy the job? Or are they just getting there for a paycheck and all that? I said, you have to focus on what you want. And I said, it doesn't make a difference what anyone else achieves. I said, it has to be how you feel deep down. I'm guessing, Mel, you would be a subscriber to that type of philosophy.
1,000%. And what I talk about even in my book is we can't know what we want until we know who we are, right? And I do believe that everybody has a container. Like, we are this container, and like, I could never hold in my container what Elon Musk holds in his. And this is not about being for or against Elon Musk. That's not that statement. The statement is he's built with a different container. So if I chased what he naturally drew to him, I would find myself in a predicament where I wasn't living a right-sized life. So, for example, when my first day on As the World Turns, when I saw that film played back when it aired, I was like, I am so bad. It was like the worst. And I think I just was like, hi, I'm Emily Stewart, and my sister's here, and I'm in a lot of trouble. Like, it was just, there was no acting, there was just nothing. And I remember my first directorial note was, could you be a little nervous? But I felt like I knew everybody because I grew up watching them. You know, I was in Oakdale finally. And so my thing wasn't, oh my God, I'm embarrassed. It was, why was I given this job if I'm actually not good at it, right? So very objective. And I thought, I think I'm being called to find out if I could be good at this. So I always say the universe doesn't necessarily pick who's qualified, but it will always qualify who it picks. So I went, I'm going to go to the best teachers and I'm going to see if I could get good at this. And that's what I did. I went to Neighborhood Playhouse. They basically created a curriculum so that I could work and study. And within a year, I was nominated for Most Outstanding Heroine. I was like, my whole trajectory of being an actor had turned around. I got so committed to a craft. And this is what I was saying to you guys before we turned, the filming on. We've lost the desire and the art of getting great at something. And we've turned that into, I want to be important to large amounts of people, whatever the cost, right? And there's a real lack to that because it misses a depth, a spiritual satisfaction that you're, as Stephen Sondheim would say, creating a hat where there was never a hat, right? Creativity is about making something that was never there before. It's not about, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's not what true creativity and true creation is about.
So if we talk about imposter syndrome, Mel, in that situation, did you feel like when you first got your first directing or kind of note back at you, did you kind of say to yourself, wait a second, I really shouldn't be here? And if so, did you kind of say, well, do you know what, as you said, you sought out the best kind of talent who could actually teach you how to do it. But do you view a situation whereby if you're in a position where you have a job, you have a position, whatever it is, and even though you are qualified for it, deep down you're thinking, I'm going to be found out, they're going to realize I'm useless, and they're going to fire me. Do you kind of say to someone in that situation, knuckle down, do what you know you can do and bring that out to the fore, rather than kind of saying, no, I'm going to be found out, and act from a place of fear rather than kind of ownership of your actual talents?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of answers to that. It's a really great question. Number one, it's always an invitation to find out how to be better. Anything that presents itself to you in this life. Nothing lands at your feet by accident. And so it's always an invitation to be better or potentially great at something. Imposter syndrome is a very interesting condition because the language around it is wrong. The language around it is, oh my God, I'm going to be found out. Oh my God, I'm not good enough, da 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 da, right? But the true language should be, what am I afraid of at a survival level? Because fear at that height is all about survival level. When we're charged to that level, it's always the question of, why do
Mike, have I paused?
No, Melanie's crashed. Oh. I need to make a note of that.
I thought it was.
wait, cool.
Yep, you're back. There we go.
So the better messaging is, what's the fear down deep? So if we separate the fear from possibility and talent, you have to address both. Talent's not going to remedy the fear. The fear has nothing to do with the talent. It has to do with old messages. So you got to do that work. That's, again, what my book is about, is how do we clear those old messages so we can stand confident in who we are and what we do. Then you go ahead, simultaneously as well, obviously, if it need be. But then you can go ahead and build your craft. So I think I didn't have a moment on World Turns where I thought, I don't deserve to be here. My thinking was more, well, I was picked for a reason, so I better show up. I'm required to get better at this craft. The universe knows more than I do. So it's put it here in front of me. So I better get better at my craft. And if and when I do feel insecure, I better heal that part of myself. But they're two different things, I think.
And when you were on the show then, and you were kind of settling in and you were getting better at your craft, what did you think in terms of where your future would be? Did you kind of say to yourself, I'm going to do this for a couple of years, I'm going to get out of the game then and do something else? Or did you say, I'm going to take this as far as I can, but I'm going to try and experience different roles and challenge myself in this field?
I'm going to help your perspective of me. I'm not built like that. Imagine a kid in romper room.
Yeah.
That's what life is to me. If I have a toy in front of me, I'm going to play with that toy as long and as passionately as I can. And when I'm done, I go to the next toy. I'm not actually kidding. I literally don't get stuck on it. I go, okay. And by the way, you said you've reinvented yourself and I have reinvented myself so many times. And in the reinvention, I've also failed at things. Some things didn't work, but that's the beauty. And that's when you go, oh, okay. So there are gifts, there are talents that we are meant to experience and generously give to the world around us. And then there are just some things you're not good at and you're not built for, and that's okay. So when we have this idea that everything we create is attached to outcome, we can kill creation before it's even had a chance to move. So, people ask me when I wrote the book, oh, do you want a New York Times bestseller? I said, no, I want a good book. And I have absolute faith that who needs the book will energetically find my book. And I was willing to accept I was very fortunate. It got all 5-star reviews. It was great, but it might not have. And you have to just go, it's an interesting thing to birth something like that, right? That's on the written page forever, ever, ever. And the same thing with the album. Stepping into the studio with Lady Gaga's band, and these are all Grammy Award winning musicians, and I don't have a Grammy.
Yet.
Yet. And I'm in there going, wow, this is the most incredible learning experience of my life. These are masters. These musicians are master musicians, some of the greatest musicians in the world right now. And I'm sharing a space alchemically with them. And we recorded all the songs in the studio. We overdubbed certain things, but the main band was in the studio together for hours and hours and hours. Everybody was in their own booth. We were live. So it's a real jazz album with some pop flair, because it's my writing. A lot of it's my writing, so I like a hookier vibe. But this is life of the creative if you're a creative. And it's scary sometimes, and you have to be very smart about how you live financially, so that you can continue to create and not hang your hat on outcome and monetization.
And since you've brought up about the album, Mel, when did you decide you wanted to make the album? Or is this something you wanted to do for quite a long time? I suspect it's something you've wanted to do for quite a long time. Would that be right?
It is right. And my music career started just as strangely as my acting career did.
Oh, yes. I can't wait to hear this now.
I was on World Turns. I apologize. I don't know how to turn my texting off. And it's dinging, so I'm really sorry, you guys. See, something I am so not good at.
Are you on a Mac?
I am.
So up in the top bar, the very top,
Okay.
you will see a icon. It's like two switches.
Two switches.
Assuming you're relatively up to date on software.
Oh, wait, like two thingies?
Yes, like two toggles. You'll see there's an option there for focus. If you click on that, you can put it into Do Not Disturb.
Oh, wait.
Just make sure you turn it off afterwards. Otherwise, you won't have any notifications coming through.
So, Do Not Disturb. Okay.
Yeah. And then that will mute all the dinging. Just remember to undo it when we're done. Otherwise, you're going to have no notifications come through on your Mac.
Well, but it's so funny. It's like, he's like, there's two switches. I'm like, thingies? And he goes, because I'm using the technical term. Obviously. My music career started, I was on World Turns. And when I say that show was huge, I mean, I had to sign an autograph for Betty Davis. Can I just say that?
Oh my good Lord. No
That's
way.
the coolest thing ever, that she called the studio and asked for my autograph. I was like, oh my God, I am the coolest person on the planet. Anyway, a producer had called the show and asked to speak with me, a music producer. And I spoke to him. He asked me if I sang. I said, no, I don't. He said, you write? And I said, I write poetry. And he said, we like your look. Can we meet with you? So we met and we wrote some songs together. Then I was in the recording studio in Westchester, and we were doing horn parts, and they said we need a vocal to wrap one of the horns around. I got into the recording booth. I sang the line we needed, and then there was a very well-known engineer there, and he walked in and he said, who is that? And I said, it's Melanie. And he said, she sounds like Karen Carpenter, which I wish. And then they had me do a song that was a Burt Bacharach song, and then a major manager in LA heard it. It got sent out to him. They flew in, and then they had me writing with like amazing writers out in LA. And then I signed a small deal with a producer from Sony World, and we recorded this demo. Then this man named John Clemmer, who was the original Kenny G, wanted to go on tour with me. He got sick, he stopped touring. I left the industry. I had my son. I wasn't doing my music. And then a local producer had asked me, I hear you sing, would you consider singing again? I said, well, I'm too old. And they said, if I have some musicians come in and they say, you should do this, would you consider it? So we met and I sang, and they were like, oh my God, you need to be doing this. And so we started working on a one-woman show. Then COVID hit. And I was like, okay, well, that's just the universe going, not a good idea. And then this jazz producer came into my life who's a genius. And she said to me, you need to do an album. And I went, okay, let's see what happens. And that's how the album came about. And then these incredible musicians came in and became a part of the project and loved the music, and I was over the moon. It was great. So my first release, Smile, is available everywhere now.
And Mel, in terms of, say, the album, in terms of the songs and all that, are you telling a story throughout the album, or are they just individual kind of tracks telling their own individual stories?
Well, the name of the album is The Broken and the Breaker. And I named the album, it's the title track, but I named the album that, and the song is about how we all, you know how we're all like, oh my God, my heart got broken, but we never talk about who we broke. Right? It's never like, right? It's never like, I ruined that person's life, right? No, it's never that. It's always, meh, meh. So it's really all of the stories about the broken and the breaker. Like, what is it in life that breaks us? What is it in life that makes us run from things and things fall apart? And then how do we, there's a song on the album, it's called Again, and it's really about that love comes again. And just as everything in nature has a cycle to it, we have to learn not to collapse into the bad or the good. When things are going great, terrific, but they're going to get worse. And when things are going bad, terrific, because they're going to get better. Right? Life is this, it's not that. So that's really, each song in the album is a story about the experience in this life of the heart.
And Mel, just out of curiosity, in terms of, say, like your music, in your acting and things like that, we kind of frame this as the Adam Driver question. Do you find it hard to, say, look back at your own acting performances or listen to your own music? Or do you can you easily separate it and say, like, that's me doing a role and I'm very easy, I can just watch that back? Or do you find it hard to watch yourself or indeed listen to yourself?
Well, I don't typically watch myself. I was in two things. I have another home in Naples, Florida, and I was in Florida with my son. And he's like, Mom, I never really watched Seinfeld all the way through, like all your episodes. And so I had to sit and watch with him. And, of course, it's like, oh my God, it was so scary. My hair was so long and dark. What did I do it for? Like, it's never just like getting into the moment that way. But I found something else very interesting. Just a couple of months ago, they rented out a movie theater in Long Island to show the Sacrifice of Angels episode. My big death scene. And it was great. The theater sold out. It was really a lovely evening. Everybody was so terrific. And they played the episode on a movie screen, it's enormous. It was so cute. My name came up, everybody applauded. I'm like, oh, this is so nice. and I sat objectively and I watched it for the story and the drama. And what I love about the Star Trek shows is because you're in this crazy makeup, you can be anything. Like you're not being looked at as this idea in human form that people want you to be because you look a certain way. You're this creature.
Yeah.
And you can just create in the story you want to tell. And I really felt the theatrical, if you really look at Star Trek, you go, this could be on stage. It's so theatrical, right? It's so almost Shakespearean, the way, and, even the voice, Mark's voice, Taurus the all, it's very dramatic. And so watching it, I didn't get cringy at all, but typically everything else, if I have ever caught it, I'm thinking more like, oh yeah, that was that dress that was too tight under the arms.
So do you find it easier then to watch yourself in prosthetics like a Zial because you're in the makeup and you don't necessarily not identify as them, but it's harder to see yourself in them because you're in all of that makeup?
Maybe. Like I said, it's hard to compare because I don't typically, like friend of mine called me once and she's like, you're on every single channel, right?
Oh.
I think Mel has glitched for a sec.
Mel's glitched again.
Are we okay?
We're back again.
You're back.
Yeah.
Oh, we're back. So she called, she's like, you're on every single channel. And I was like, the same show? And she goes, no, all different shows. But I don't watch. So like I will tell you this, when I would go to dailies, then I would cringe.
Yeah.
Like before the edit, when the camera's just hanging on you, that's not fun.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
What were some of the shows that you enjoyed working on, Melanie, when you were acting?
Well, Seinfeld was a blast. I mean, that's the talent of the talent. From writing, directing, camera work, acting, humor, craft service. It was the best craft service of any show.
That's how you know it's a good show, is when the actors remember the craft service over the rest of it.
I'm like, I want some sushi. There's sushi. Like, it had everything. But it was such an incredible company on that show. They were stellar. I loved working on Deep Space. I really loved working on Deep Space. And I loved the character of Toriziel. The makeup was so hard for me, and it's why I had to leave. I would get migraines. My call times were 4 and 5 in the morning. I was sleep deprived. You're covered. I'm wearing a wig. I'm wearing neoprene. I'm covered in prosthetic makeup. Things are glued on. It's 4.5 hours to put the makeup on. It's 2.5 hours to take the makeup off. It was just so hard for me. But Toriziel was one of my favorite roles, for sure.
What made her stand out as being one of your favorite roles?
Well, she was like the ambassador of peace. She stood for what I stand for as a human spirit, right? And I loved her innocence. I loved that she was an artist. I loved that she loved. Like, she really loved. And she saw behind and beyond everybody's foibles, right? Her dad was like, you're allowed to say prick on this.
Yes, go for it. Mark, you heard it here first. No, I'm joking.
But I loved my father, and I loved Nana. I loved her character, and I loved my boyfriend. So it was all. He's so great, Andrew. But I did a movie with him prior to Deep Space. But it was this innocence, but make it up as you go.
Mm.
Right? Like, allow the character to evolve and move into whatever you want it to be.
And as you were saying, when you were on As the World Turns, it was the biggest show on the planet, even bigger than kind of Baywatch and things like that. And I'm curious, and obviously Star Trek has its own extremely passionate fan base and things like that.
Does it? First I've heard of it.
I know, yeah. You'd never think Star Trek has really popular fans and things like that. How did you handle the kind of trappings of fame and being kind of somebody who was kind of known and recognized, say, in these kind of situations?
Because I've always loved people, I'll tell you a funny story. Whenever I would stop, I would just sign autographs till the cows came home. I would just if I had to be somewhere, it went out the window. And then one day I was out to lunch with my girlfriend. You know who she is, Cindy Crawford. And we were leaving the restaurant.
just mic drop that one in there, why don't you?
Yeah, mic drop, just saying, the most gorgeous woman on the planet. And we were leaving this restaurant in Beverly Hills called the Ivy. And we walk outside, and there's this enormous group of people in paparazzi. I pretended they were there for me. And it's actually really funny because she says, I have time for 3. And I went, you can do that? It was I've been doing this for years. And it literally was like a duh, you can do that. And then nobody was unhappy with her because she did have to be at a doctor's appointment. And I was like, wow, you moron. So when you say like, how did I handle it? I had a lot of fun with it, but I didn't learn how to boundary it for many years again. You know, I didn't know how to boundary it. And then when I did, it made it easier, but I never, even when I do the conferences now, the conventions, the Star Trek conventions or career shows, I don't rush my fans. I love taking pictures with them. I listen to their stories. I mean, part of what I love about life is the individuality of people and their story and what we bring to their life. Like I always say to people at these conventions, we don't really know what we do for a living until we meet you. Like we're playing with one another and we're having this time of our life doing these creative things, but we don't recognize what we actually do for a living until we hear how we alchemically changed your life. And so there's a lot of nourishment in that for me. It makes the work, because when you think about it, in a vacuum, it's kind of, you know, in a way, self-aggrandizing work, right? It's like you're there and everybody's looking at you. But when you find out that what it is in the storytelling changes lives, you're like, this is so meaningful. And what I'm doing is meaningful. So, yeah. Did I answer your question? I think I did.
Absolutely you did, Mel. You absolutely did. I'm curious, who on the set, obviously at DS9, you would have been close to Andrew, you would have been close to Mark, you would have been close to Nana and all that. Who was the biggest, say, joker on the set? Who was the kind of one who was kind of keeping everybody kind of motivated and kind of, you know, in good spirits and all that?
I think everybody did, honestly. Like, it's hard when you are in that makeup all day long. It's very easy to start losing focus. And everybody on that show, bar none, was so compassionate, so generous. Like if you forgot a line, which, you know, of course I never did, but if you forgot a line, it wasn't like, oh, you know, it was just like, are you okay? Do you need water? The lights are really hot. Why don't you step over there for just a second, take a couple of deep breaths? You know, how can I help? You know, and then you would step back in. It was never like, come on, we really want to get the day done. It was never that, you know. So I think that everybody was lighthearted. Everybody was generous. Everybody, you know, that show tended to attract real thespians. You know, so many of the people, if not all of the people on that show, were truly theater trained. So it did act like a company, which was really special. It was a really interesting show to work on.
I have to ask the question because I'm Irish, so I can't not ask the question. What was Colm Meaney like?
I don't know. Who? Wait, what character was that?
Chief O'Brien.
I didn't work with him.
What? Oh my gosh. Well, that's a question we don't need an answer to then.
Mike, show that massively.
Mike, we can edit that out of the episode now when we're going back through the. Yes, we can, Mike, 100%.
Okay.
Mel, you left acting, and from your website, it was saying following the birth of your son. Is that correct? Was that the catalyst to leave the acting world?
Yes. It was so funny. I got pregnant and I wasn't telling anyone. And then my friend Peter Melman, who was one of the head writers on Seinfeld, called me and said, hey, I wrote this role that I want you to play. Will you do the role? And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. And it was a show called It's Like You Know with Jennifer Grey, who's so lovely. And I was like, okay. So then wardrobe started calling me. And they're like, well, what's your size? And I'm like, today? I'm a 2. To play by the time we start, I might be an 8. So I started to recognize, like, okay, we're getting to the point where it's probably not realistic to start auditioning for anything that's going to lock you in for a long period of time, because I knew I didn't want, as I got further into the pregnancy, I knew I didn't want to be locked down into anything. And then as time went on, I actually ended up being a high risk pregnancy, and I knew I couldn't work. And then when I had my son, I didn't want to be away from him. And I do believe that our children and shepherding our children onto this planet is entirely our responsibility. And if you can do it as well as it needs to be done while working in a job these are not 9 to 5s. You are gone early in the morning, and sometimes you're not back till 9, 10 o'clock at night. If you have the wherewithal and you have the bandwidth to be able to raise a child in full while still working like that, God bless you. I knew I didn't. And so I was offered a show before I left the industry, and I knew right then and there it was not a decision. It was an absolute no. And I sold my house in Los Angeles, and I moved to the country, and I raised my son. And my son is an example of what greatness can come from that. Yeah.
And then in terms of making that decision, and you obviously then moved into life coaching, when you made the decision to leave and you made the decision you're going to raise your son, things like that, I know we've kind of spoke about kind of a similar kind of topic. What did you kind of think to yourself would be the next thing that you would kind of do, that you would kind of embrace, or that you would try? Did you think it would be life coaching, or did you think it'd be something else? Or did you just say, when the time comes, I know it'll be the time for me to make that decision?
Joe, there's going to be a test at the end of this. Do you not remember me saying?
Yes.
I know. The romper room. It's like I'm into the truck, and now there's a boat, and here's a helicopter, and I trust implicitly. I just Then when I had my son and we moved, I was like, you know what? I'm going to open a wellness center. And I opened a wellness center. And we became one of the top wellness centers in the country. I hosted enormous events. I taught yoga and wellness classes. I went back to university, and I started a coaching practice around wellness, which then evolved into wellness and loss grief recovery, which then evolved into the proprietary work I do now, plus helping people with branding or creating. I work a lot with founders. I work a lot with creatives. I work a lot with creative talents on how to build their businesses, how to be a presence, how to not be afraid to change your life, how not to be afraid to step into what's next. Life is, it's like a river, and the river collects parts of everything it moves through, and it carries in its flow all of your wisdom, all of your knowledge, and it lands you somewhere if you let yourself be a part of life in its organic nature, right? If we're constantly muscling an idea, we may miss exactly what's right for us.
I have to jump in here because there's a specific quote I took from your website, and I was there going, will I just shorten this down? And I said, you know what, I'm actually going to read this word for word because I absolutely love it. And it said, I have studied psychology, coaching, grief and loss, bioenergetics, archetypes, meditation, yoga, and many alternative healing modalities. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong. I have also devoted years of study to business, behavioral finance, money, branding, artistic development, marketing, and entrepreneurship. But the best part is I've also lived it. And I was absolutely blown away by that sentence. I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was brilliant because it just showed kind of what type of person you are and how you're willing to embrace everything. And as you said, before you give out to me, before I forget it, it's like the romper room. You're willing to go and say, I enjoy this. Now I've done with it. I'm going to move on to something else.
And by the way, as I said earlier, right, life is a feeling, right? It's not a thing. It's not a target. It's not an idea. It's a feeling, right? So when I feel that something is completed and moved through me, why would I want to force that feeling to stay stagnant? Why wouldn't I allow my body to flow towards the next feeling it wants to experience? So, and then if we trust that and we go, well, whatever my nature in this world at this time needs to manifest what will continue the sensation of emotional, spiritual, psychological, and energetic success, I just have to open to whatever downloads, right? Like, it has to download. It has to come down into you. You know, I wrote that book by sitting at my computer for 6 hours every day, but I could not have done it before or after. It was birthed through me exactly when the words were in the universe to be structured. And that's when I gathered them. And I listened to the feeling that it was time.
And you said, like, a few minutes ago, you were saying that you opened a wellness center, and then you said it became one of the most celebrated wellness centers in the nation. Like, there's a big jump between I'm just going to open a wellness center to it's one of the most celebrated ones. Like, there's a big jump between the two. How did you do it, Mel? How did you kind of say, I'm going to, we're going to completely just build this up and things like that? And like, how many years did it take you to kind of get it to that place?
Well, this is what's crazy sort of about my life, right? But I don't think it's me. I think it's my perspective on, I'm willing to take a hit and I'm willing to take a win, right? I'm there for you to tell me the experience that has to be had in this moment. And so I invested all this stuff into this wellness center, and it was spectacular. I mean, it was such a beautiful wellness center. And I remember 2 days, I guess, before opening, a lot of my celebrity friends were going to come to the opening, and I was going to be free press. But there was a policeman killed. And, you know, when those kinds of things happen, it gets all the front page and it gets all the editorial space. And so I didn't have that anymore. It was gone. And I just went, oh my God, what have I done? Nobody knows who I am here. Like, literally nobody knew who I was. They knew that who I was, but they didn't know who I was. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there wasn't a sense of loyalty. So I'm like, oh my God. So I sat down, I'm a meditator, and I sat down in meditation. I turned my flip phone off, and I didn't even have a BlackBerry yet, but that was my next one. And I turned my flip phone off, and I said, I'm just going to meditate on this. Like, I need to know if I'm going to just be pouring good money after bad. Like, now I don't have this big news, this big, announcement that I'm opening the doors, whatever. And if this is going to be like a big fail, I understand I just lost a huge chunk of money building this, but if it's just going to be a burn rate that's going to literally destroy me, I'm willing to even not open, right? So I sat down and I just said, I'm going to meditate on this, and you tell me when I come out of meditation what I have to do. And I went into meditation, I came out of meditation, turned on my phone, and there was a call from Oprah's producer.
This is like the Cindy Crawford story again, like just kind of
just another mic drop,
Just, you know what I mean? Like.
So I call them back, and she says to me, Oprah's doing a Seinfeld reunion show, and you are her favorite episode. So we want to air your clip. Will you sign a waiver? And I said, yes. But can Oprah or your office tell the networks what I'm doing now? Because I'm opening my wellness center, and my publicity's kind of fallen into a hole because of, I told them what it was. And she was like, let me see what I can do. I signed the waiver. I figured it'll happen or it won't. The next thing I know, I get a call. Each major network did 15 minutes on the opening of my center. And we opened a standing room only, and that was it. It was crazy. Like, it just, from the first day, it was a success until I sold it in 2011. So yeah, that was that, like, but I'm telling you, when you work on your belief system, when you get rid of past traumas, past stories, inherited beliefs, inherited models of how life should be lived, you clear your palette so you're an empty canvas. Life does unfold like this because you just go, swaha, holding it up to the light, do what you do, man, I'm all good. I know how to like forage for berries.
Oh, these mushrooms aren't poisonous. You won't kill
So hang on a sec, Mel. Wait, am I right in guessing you sold it in 2011 because you were there going, I've done it now, it's time for something else. Is that right?
100%.
Yeah.
Hold on, we're frozen. So this was crazy. I had this speaker, New York Times bestselling author, coming in to do a workshop at my wellness center, and I was trying to figure out next kind of moves. And her name's Ina Siegel, really lovely woman, and she's Russian, but she was raised in Australia. She had the craziest accent. It was so interesting.
Oh my word!
It's an interesting mix.
Right. So I pick her up from the airport, I guess, and or the train station, I can't remember. And I'm taking her to dinner, and she's very quiet. And I'm, making conversation here and there, but I also want to give her space because I don't know if she's not a talker. That's, So we go out to dinner, and we're sitting very quietly, and then she says in this incredible accent that I'd never heard before, it's over. It's time to close the doors. And I was like, interesting, because I've been in talks with someone who wants to buy. Do I do that? And she said, yes, you have a training coming up. And when that's done, you're done. Go, leave. Every soul that needed this, needed it, and it's over. And I was like, cool. So I finished my training. Okay. I sold the company. The next day, after it was the day when I closed the doors, someone came in, bought all the furnishings, I negotiated all the contracts for my workers, and then that was that. That's how it ended. Yeah.
I absolutely admire that so much, man. Is there a point to me even asking what was the next plan? Because I know there was none.
It was to sleep. I just slept. And all of my private clients that had been in my coaching practice basically carried over into my private practice. And then I had produced and co-created this reality show. And that was really fun. And then, but that was a whole kind of kerfuffle, and that ended up we got picked up, we got bought, and then we didn't get picked up. And so that was that. And then I was like, 6 months, man, I am just gonna like hang out with my son, sleep, see a few clients, have a little nosh, drink a little wine. And so I did that.
Have lunch with Cindy Crawford,
I know.
Get a random phone call from Oprah's producers, that kind
I'm
of thing.
just waiting for Michelle Obama sent me an email yesterday or something along that line.
So yeah, that was really like, that was the trajectory. And then
Sorry, hang on, Mel, for a second. I have to say something there. Mike, you do realize that Mel did not say that Michelle Obama didn't email her. So I think that the lack of a denial is a confirmation.
I don't like to talk about the former first lady. It's a big, mum's the word. But that has been my life experience. Do you remember the show Mr. Magoo? You're too young, probably.
I remember Mr. Magoo, of course I do.
He was the guy who just was in the car, and then he fell off the road and went onto the boat and into the haystack, and Like, I just drive around. My sister's always like, oh, you always step in shit. And I go, no, I just walk around the world all the time. So there's a lot of shit to step in, right? If you just keep walking, man.
Actually, I have that. I'm curious about this. You went back and you did do study and things like that. How good of a student were you, Mel? Because we know how good you are at other things. I'm just curious, how good of a student were you?
I was a really good student in certain subjects. I was terrific in English. I was terrific in creative writing, law, the psychology, metaphysics, philosophy. I love it. It was hard because everybody has the same name except one consonant is off. And like, you're taking a test and you're like, wait, who said that? And how do you say that? Like, it was just so hard. And I also am very good at understanding finance. Where I fall apart is numbers. I am dyslexic, and I am particularly dyslexic with numbers. So math was always challenging for me, to the point where my guidance counselor called me down in high school and said, we don't understand somebody with your IQ and your grades in other areas struggling so badly with math. And I think I was actually high. And I said to my guidance counselor, Mr. Battaglia, who was the funkiest looking guy I'd ever seen to this day. And I said to him, well, Mr. Battaglia, hi, I don't think numbers are my friend. I think words are my friend. And he looked at me like I was completely out of my mind. And then he gave me a challenge that if I got my grades up in math, I could skip study period at the end of the day and go home early. I studied 24/7. I got my grades up, but only for that semester. It was way too much work. So yeah, I struggled a lot, which is why I actually wanted to be a designer, and I did not get into Pratt or Parsons because of my math grades. So I didn't go to design school.
So do you know what? Very similar to you. Absolutely hated maths. Struggled with maths. I was really lucky. My mum is a cleaner, and she cleaned at essentially a space science laboratory. So I actually had a PhD student who was doing, I think she was doing astromechanics or something along that line. She taught me for the last last year and a half to get me through my grades. And then I became a designer. But I still failed maths. I failed maths miserably. But I then went to college to do music and fell in love with creative arts and music and sound.
And you had to be relatively good at math for music too, didn't you?
I'm not a well, I can play drums, but that's about it. I can play a bit of keyboard, but I'm an engineer. I'm a sound engineer.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Unlike
it was really hard for me. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Unlike the two of you, my father was a maths teacher, and so I had to be good at it. My dad was actually offered a job by Harvard in 1994. That's how bloody good he was. So if I wasn't good at maths, my God, I was in trouble. So I had to be really good at maths. So yeah, no choice there. And my mother was an Irish teacher, so I was also caught on that one.
And it's funny, I don't know if you know who Fran Lebowitz is. One really a satirist, writer, and she's brilliant. And she always had a hard time learning how to tell time. So they made her spend a summer living with her uncle who was a professor at MIT to teach her time. It's like so funny how these great brains, we still get stuck on things. And I guess it was because numbers were not my friend. I don't know. Because when there's a story attached to numbers, like finance, right, and behavioral finance, that's fine. But if you have me doing real math, it's tough.
So I need the diameter of this orange times 3 in 12 different parallel language universes, and I'm done with that.
Which I needed so frequently.
It's quite funny. For the years at school, I am never going to need algebra. I'm never going to need trigonometry. And even to this day, I've still yet to use it.
Yeah, it's just, but I always say, I said to my son, college is really a vetter, right? College just vets to the people who are looking for you, like what you are as processed through the system, right? Oh, they went through this school, which means they're this kind of thinker, right? This level thinker. It's just a vetting process in life, I think, anyway. But
that's a good way to look at it, to be fair.
Yeah.
Mel, I wanted to ask you about your book. If I'm correct, the book is called Unfinished Business. Am I right? For the love of God, please tell me I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm in trouble.
Oh,
yes, I got it right. Yes. Do it.
Here's a copy I prepared earlier. No.
It's all my notes.
8 steps to heal your trauma, transcend your past, and transform your life.
As you said, you were in a position where it was the perfect time for you to write the book. But was this the book you wanted to write the whole time? Or was this one of many ideas you had in terms of book you wanted to write? Being the romper stamper that you are in terms of moving ideas and things like that, I'm of the opinion that you must have had several ideas and that was the one you settled on. Am I right?
It's a really great question, and I have a very honest answer. I have a million book ideas, but this is the only one that showed up in me.
Yeah.
So this is all intellectual property. This is all the work I do. This is a process I do with clients and have been doing, and it has evolved through over 20 years in my practice. Because what I started noticing is people were coming to me with patterning, like really solid patterns that couldn't let them get to the next level of their life, even high-level CEOs. And what I started noticing was there was either loss or trauma or belief or ideology or faulty modeling that was in their past. And so in my studies through the years of psychology, positive psychology, bioenergetics, et cetera, the chakra system, the energy system, I knew that I could come up with a process that would clear the system of these old beliefs, behaviors, and ways of being. So one day I had COVID. I was one of the early cases in New York City. I still had my home. I had another home there. And I just woke up and it was like, you need to write Unfinished Business. And I was like, oh, that's the name of it? Okay, I'll write it. And I wrote it. And that's how, right, it just sort of downloaded, and I was like, who would you be if nothing bad ever happened to you?
And what was your writing style? Because I know that I've you've offered me before in terms of people are saying it's better just write, even if it's terrible, you can edit it, but at least it's out of your head and it's on paper. You said you were sitting down for 6 hours a day writing and things like that. Is that what you just said to yourself? I'm going to sit down, I'm going to keep writing, changing it, editing it until it's done.
Well, here's the other, the thing I was talking about is it's a feeling, right? I felt drawn to the computer. I felt like I couldn't wait till all my stuff was done so I could just do that. It felt like something had to come out of me. It was birthing itself. And Mike, you'll appreciate this. With music, right? There's a rhythm. There's a cadence to writing songs. And as a songwriter, there's a cadence to my writing, right? Even my editor had said at one point, it's really interesting, how your cadence in your writing is. It's almost musical in a way. So I guess my style of writing is very conversational. I'm not a fancy schmancy writer. I write the truth. I write what's in my heart. And I think I write musically. Yeah.
And what did you make in terms of, say, as you were saying earlier in this recording as well, like people were saying that, did you want it to be like on the New York Times bestseller list and all that kind of thing? And you were going, no, I wanted to write a book that's going to actually connect with people. Do you feel, with the book having been out, do you think you've achieved that? Do you think that it has connected with people in the way that you wanted it to?
I mean, I get messages and emails. This one woman wrote me, I don't know you. I don't follow you. I don't know your acting work. I just wanted to tell you that you saved my son's life. And I didn't know it until I found your book in his room. And I said, thank you so much for sharing that. If you ever want to share his story with me, please do. I get messages like that quite a bit, which is remarkable. Like, how lucky am I?
My word, that's absolutely incredible, Val. I'm going to ask a question which I already know the answer to, but I have to ask the question. What is next for Mel Smith? Is there anything that's immediately in your head of what you want to do, or you're going, no, not a chance. Whatever comes up next, whatever arrives at the right time, is what I'm going to do next? Because being honest with Jamel, I'm completely inspired by everything you've said here, everything you've done, how you've gone about it, when you've known to move, when you've known to get out, when you've always known to kind of stick with the things that you want to do. It's been incredibly inspirational. So I'm completely fascinated to know, like, I know you're not going to plan out anything like that, but is there anything that you yourself kind of think to yourself, I wouldn't actually mind giving that a go at some point? Because you've done the book, you're doing the music. Like, what else is there? Like, surely running for president at some point, Mel, has to be on the list somewhere. Like,
couldn't go into that pond. Oy vey. One's like, this is very important to me. The CD is very important to me, because I think music really moves people, and I do think that this will really move people. My producer is on me about doing a one-woman show. And it's funny, my friends who are very well respected in the music industry they've asked me for a link to be able to hear it, and they were so funny. They're like, the good news is it's amazing, the bad news is you might have to do a live show. So that's going in and out about, like, I have to know for sure it's where, that's what I mean, like, it's a feeling, right? But my way of creating is funny. I go, like, I create and then I'm like, okay, thank you, I'm done, right? And then I like go like that. And so now, like, can you do something with that? Okay, can you do something with that? I'm over here, and I'm not a promoter. Like, I post things I believe on my Instagram and whatnot, and I show you the book, but I'm not a promoter. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a spellcaster. I put an offering out there for you to enjoy with your heart and soul. I give you the best part of me. I share truths that I have gleaned through my life, and in the ways I can share it. And then these things have a life of their own. They're out with their own intrinsic purpose. And now I kind of like sit and wait. Like, what will I wake up, and when will I know? Like, even with my homes, I've been like, oh, I think I'm going to move. And then one day I wake up and I go, that house is on the market that you should have. And I open up my computer and I go, yeah, that's it. And then I really do live in the moment. I really do listen to something greater than me for why I'm here in this life.
I'm half expecting to hear like a moving truck reversing up to your house right now and some guys coming in taking the paintings off the wall. Okay, Mel, come on, we're moving. We'll be in the new house by 6 o'clock.
Isn't moving house the worst thing ever, though? Do you enjoy, and this sounds really daft, do you enjoy moving house because it's a different set, different environment, different way of thinking?
Well, I love design.
Yeah.
I love design, so that is an aspect of it. But, it's like, I'm going to be 62 this year. So I'm getting a little tired. I'm like, all right, I think I'll just like have a cookie and watch a movie. That might be all there is left, by the way. Like, do I have every app so I can see every show that ever was made?
Am I spending $180 a month on streaming apps? Yes, good. Right, tick.
I'm always making it. I'm like, we used to get television and water for free.
Oh, don't.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Because if you think about it, 10, 15 years ago, you paid your $50, $60 a month for cable, right? And you had ads. And then all of a sudden, the DVR came out, so you can record the shows and skip the ads. Now we've had streaming services which didn't have ads, and now we've moved to streaming services that have got ads that you can't skip, and there's no way to skip them, and it's costing you more a month than what it did when you had cable 20 years ago.
Correct. And we're buying, and corporations earn record profits, but
yeah.
Mel, actually, what you were saying about design, I can't let you go without actually saying that the second this video started, I have to compliment your house because it looks absolutely incredible. Beautiful. Both rooms that we can see here are they're absolutely wonderful altogether. Mike, do you have any last question for Mel? I think you've got one.
Well, we have the last question, but last question is then. It's really easy, Mel. You won't even need to think about it at all, I promise. Mel Smith, what does Star Trek mean to you?
Star Trek actually means a lot to me. Not just because of my experience, but, I watched Star Trek as a kid, right? And what I've always loved about the underlying message of not only Star Trek the show, but Star Trek the community, is it is the original soapbox for inclusion, for community, for finding higher meaning in an existence that we think we know everything about. I love, when I did the 50-year anniversary celebration in Las Vegas, I went out the night before I had to speak. And I didn't have makeup, obviously my makeup. I don't go everywhere with that.
You don't dress up as Ziao on a daily basis?
So I went out to dinner, and every other table were the attendees. I think they told me there were 40,000 people there or something. So it was all the attendees, and I sat there quietly eating my dinner by myself, and everybody was talking about the details of in 19 blah, 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 they got this wrong because the original storyline, really, that wasn't the child of that person. And when I got up to speak the next day I think they said there were 6,000 people there. And I said to everybody, before we talk about the show, I want to talk about you as a community. And I got really emotional last night listening to the way you all care and love these characters and these stories. And if every one of us loved something that much, if every one of us created connections around something meaningful like this community does, and if everybody was willing to accept that maybe we all are from different planets, maybe we all do look different, but there is something in the togetherness of trying to figure that out, we would have a greater world, and we would probably have peace. So that's really what Star Trek honestly means to me. I started actually writing a piece about how Star Trek was the original catalyst for the idea of true inclusion. And I love that about the show, and I love it about the community, and it's a spiritual show. And that's why I loved the characters so much, because Tora Ziyal lived wholly what I believe, that life is an art and love is at the core of it.
That's beautiful. I like that.
Is that okay?
just shed a tear now.
Unlike Barbara Walters, someone has to cry.
Mel, honestly, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Well,
For everybody, no, honestly, thank you. For everybody watching and listening at home, remember you can catch up more Clonestar podcast at our website, clonestarpod.com. Until next time, I'm going to end it slightly differently. Boldly be you.